Audible's best of 2024 picks are here. Discover the year's top audiobooks, podcasts, and originals in all your favorite genres. From memoirs and sci-fi to mysteries and thrillers, Audible's curated list in every category is the best way to hear 2024's best in audio entertainment. Like a stunning new full-cast production of George Orwell's 1984. Heartfelt memoirs like Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's Lovely One, the year's best fiction like The Women by Kristen Hanna, and Percival Everett's brilliantly subversive James. Another worthwhile listen is Amy Tintera's thrilling and twisting whodunit, Listen for the Lie. This laugh-out-loud funny tale follows Lucy, a woman who needs to clear her own name after a true crime podcast decides to probe into the worst night of her life, one she conveniently can't remember. Audible. There's more to imagine when you listen. Go to audible.com/WonderyPod and discover all the year's best waiting for you.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids instantly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Sign up for Greenlight today at greenlight.com/Wondery. That's greenlight.com/Wondery.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. I've got a great episode for you today. If you are unfamiliar with this case, buckle up. For those of you that are familiar with this case, there is more than you think you know. This is the story of the Texas Cheerleading Murder Plot. In 1991 in Channelview, Texas, after Wanda Holloway's daughter Shanna narrowly missed out on a spot on her junior high school squad for 2 consecutive years, her ex-brother-in-law, Terry Harper, reported to police that Wanda asked him to hire a hitman. According to Terry, Wanda wanted Verna Heath, the mother of the 14-year-old girl who gained a spot on the team rather than her daughter, dead. The assumption was that Wanda's daughter, Amber, would be so devastated by her mother's death that she would drop out of the cheerleading team, thus giving the spot to Shanna. Wanda Holloway was arrested the next day. The case and subsequent trials were covered extensively by American media. Key evidence in the case for the prosecution were tapes provided by Terry Harper along with his testimony, which revealed the words of Wanda offering diamond earrings in exchange for the murder of Verna Heath. The defense, however, argued that Wanda's ex-husband, Tony Harper, had instead conspired with his brother to frame Wanda, that she never intended anyone to get killed. And they pointed to the divorce between Tony and Wanda in 1980 and an ensuing custody battle over their children. Terry Harper's estranged wife, Marla LaRue Harper, also testified that he had beaten her to scare her out of revealing that he was going to get Wanda to say things to help his brother get custody of his 2 children. In the first trial, Wanda was convicted of solicitation of capital murder in the 1991 trial and sentenced to 15 years in prison. However, that conviction was overturned when it was discovered that one of the jurors was on probation for a drug-related felony and should have never been allowed to serve on the jury. So a mistrial was declared. In the second trial, Wanda Holloway pled no contest. Wanda served 6 months of her sentence, and the judge ordered her to serve the remaining 9.5 years on probation and to complete 1,000 hours of community service. The Texas Cheerleader Murder Plot on HBO Max takes viewers back to 1991 when Texas mother Wanda Holloway, who did everything to get her daughter a spot on her high school cheerleading team, including hiring a murderer to kill the mother of another cheerleader. So in this 2-hour special, it includes an interview with Shanna, the daughter of Wanda Holloway, who sheds light on her mother's true motivations, how she coped with her mother's actions, and who was secretly pulling the strings behind the curtain to set Wanda Holloway up. This was fascinating. What an interesting relook at a case that, again, was covered extensively by the American media in the early 90s. So my guest today is the director, Jason Lapeyre, and we have the most interesting conversation. So again, if you are unfamiliar with this case, you're going to be fascinated. And if you have watched that case, this is a whole new look at it. So here is my interview with the director. Jason, this story is bonkers. I can remember exactly where I was when this story broke. And I would be lying if I didn't tell you I didn't think about it often. What is your first memory of this story?
Yeah, great question. I mean, probably like a lot of people, the HBO movie, the Holly Hunter with Beau Bridges. That's where I first heard about it, and you know, I was Shanna's age when this happened. Yeah, I'm the same age as Shanna, and so you know, as a Canadian kid, a Canadian boy, you know, it was kind of like, wow, what a crazy thing that girls go through, and especially American girls. I think that was kind of, and then I just sort of forgot about it because I couldn't really relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, one of the things that's so amazing about the story is it really prefigured so much stuff that was going to happen. Like it was before Tanya Harding, it was before Dance Moms, and the culture really, like Wanda turned out to be kind of like a harbinger of things to come.
Mm-hmm.
Although, as I'm going to talk about later on, you know, after you see the film, I mean, that was my greatest experience in making the film. Was it actually wasn't quite what it seemed to be originally. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's funny you say Tanya Harding, because as I watched it, I did think there are so many elements of the story that remind me of Tanya Harding's case too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, look, I'm not making some new observation when I say that, like, the competitiveness in American culture, and again, as a Canadian, it's something I can see maybe a little bit easier from the outside because Canada is a little less, I think, intense when it comes to this stuff. But competitiveness is baked into American culture, and women are not immune to that level of competition. And certainly in Texas, as Shanna explains, you know, and some of our contributors explain, the competition to be perceived as like a successful woman in the roles you were allowed to succeed in the 80s. You know, that, and cheerleading in Texas was certainly one of them.
So let's talk a little bit about this story, highlighting who these cast of characters, if you will, where they are and who they are at that period of time in America. So girls' sports, there were very few opportunities, especially to do something successfully afterwards where you're making money.
Exactly. And as one of our contributors points out, it wasn't just that there was a lack of girls' sports, there was also a lack of funding for girls' sports as well. Like high schools were only being given money for very limited things like cheerleading for women.
And then you have the fact that cheerleading is actually tangential to football. So as one of your contributors noted, being the quarterback really is the most power if you are a teen. If you're in junior high and high school, if you're the quarterback, you have the most social capital. So attached to that would be a cheerleader.
That's it. Yeah. And then again, you know, you can kind of hear it already. First of all, religion, obviously the American religion. And in Texas, it's like elevated to like something higher than religion. High school football, even, especially. And then, but again, you can hear that how limited the roles are for women. You know, it's just about her identity, or a woman's identity, being attached to a man's, right? And that is something that comes into play later when you hear about, you know, how this all actually unfolded in terms of Wanda's story and when the police got involved.
So my first question is, how did the project come to be? Because it's all these years later. And what I do love about this project is it gives voice to Shanna, who really I think kind of fell through the cracks. People sort of forgot about her story because it became so sensationalized. So how did this project begin?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had been doing some work for a production company up here in Canada called Cream Productions, and I was directing some episodic television for them. And they had a relationship with Investigation Discovery, and this one sentence pitch came to me, and they said, you know, we were thinking of pitching a true crime documentary about this incident, this famous incident, which was kind of like predated was viral before the internet. You know what I mean? It made a big impact, but people haven't really talked about it in a long time. And so I took that pitch, and they wanted it turned around really quickly, like in 48 hours or something ridiculous. And I said, look, that's insane, but I have an idea. Because one of the things that even though it was just one sentence, they said, we really see this as a nostalgia piece, like, because the audience for these kinds of shows is definitely female, and women, who were teenagers at that age. We want to lean into the 90s of it, the big hair and the shaker knit sweaters and the dangly earrings. And so, that wasn't really my world. I didn't really understand it. So what I said to them was, if I could co-write this or co-create the pitch with my wife, Kathleen Garces, who is not in the film industry per se, but is a writer and is the same age as Shanna. Mm-hmm. And she, really helped me lean into this nostalgia element. I didn't know what a shaker knit sweater was. I didn't know about the dangly earrings. This is all her, having grown up in the 90s and, listening to, the music of that time and just knowing the culture. And So the other big idea that we had together was, let's make this Shanna's opportunity to tell her story. And so that was the very first thing that happened. Was we reached out to Shanna, Kathleen reached out to Shanna, and we really just tried to convince Shanna that we didn't want to do another typical true crime documentary, trauma porn, exploitation. And that was another thing we both liked about the story, was nobody dies. It's not yet another true crime story built on the bodies of dead women, which is a problem in the genre. So, Kathleen wrote this very passionate letter to Shanna, and we were so lucky that Shanna wrote back and said, look, someone comes to me every couple of years trying to make this documentary. You are the first people to approach with the idea of letting me tell my version, and you don't seem interested in just, pointing and laughing, which has always been the problem with this story. It's so easy to reduce it to look at these yokels in small town Texas being goofs. And our whole take was nah, this is the culture. This is a bigger issue than just some crazy woman in the suburbs. So that's kind of how the ball got rolling.
Here's something I'm really looking forward to as the weather turns cooler. Football games. Jack's in the tackle football playoffs this weekend, and Mia's dancing at her school's football games, which, by the way, are #1 in the nation. I need to be warm. I need to be chic, so I slip into a cozy sweater from Quince. Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. I just said $50. $50. Quince lets you treat your loved ones and yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price. All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. So that includes beautiful leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim, and so much more. How are they able to do that? Well, by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, which passes the savings on to you and to me. Quince is on the nice list. So get yourself a Mongolian cashmere sweater in oatmeal or black, my fave. Gift luxury this holiday season without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/Kate Casey for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Kate Casey to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Kate Casey.
You sign up for something, forget about it after the trial period ends, then you're charged month after month after month. The subscriptions are there, but you're not using them. In fact, 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. Thanks to Rocket Money, you can see all your subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones you're not using anymore. Now, boom, you're saving more money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/Wondery today. That's rocketmoney.com/Wondery. rocketmoney.com/Wondery.
And I do think, like I always think, looking through a different lens all these years later, I couldn't believe as I started to watch how differently I thought immediately about the case. Having my own life experiences, being a mother, having kids in competitive sports and activities, Was it surprising to you as you began to tell the story and learn the story, how much your opinion of it changed?
Absolutely. And look, a documentary filmmaker can't ask for any better gift than for the story to take a totally unexpected turn that you can't see coming. And so, look, some of it definitely did get line up with what I thought already. And Shanna will be the first to tell you that, yeah, at a certain point, her mom crossed the line. Her mom had a crazy thought, which was to like hurt a kid for cheerleading, right? But what we didn't learn, and I don't want to give away too much because I want people to watch the program, was when Shanna started telling us about her family history and the dynamic between her mother and her father, and this like ruthless competitiveness, and this is something that goes way beyond American culture and is just like baked into like men and women and marriage and relationships. But the ways that her mom and father tried to hurt each other and what that did to Shanna years before this incident even happened. And when she started telling us about how her father was involved in what happened and how the police readily believed the story that her uncle, the quote unquote, hitman hirer, told the cops, and the cops just were like, okay, sure, whatever you say, buddy. It got a lot more complicated really quickly.
Well, let's talk just briefly about each person's personality profile. So tell me a little bit more about the marriage of Wanda and her ex-husband.
For sure. So, Wanda and Tony were, he was her third husband. Part of that was that Wanda is a very, very strong independent person. And in Texas in the 80s, I think a lot of men were looking for bake cookies and have children. And Wanda was not that, she was a very, very strong personality. And so that marriage was, I asked Shanna at one point, I can't remember if it makes the film or not. I think it does. If she remembered any, good time, positive energy between her parents, and she doesn't. Her whole childhood was not super happy, and so that really was a contributing factor to her growing up between the two households. She was going back and forth for years before cheerleading was even a thing. So Wanda's a very strong personality. Tony, her father, was also a very strong personality, and they were sort of not in a good place. That they weren't. I don't know if they were. I think they were on speaking terms, but it was really just hand the kid off every week or 5 days or whatever the arrangement was. So not a great environment for a kid to grow up in. And then, the other great reveal, as it were, for anyone who comes to the story and only knows the surface, is when Shanna first looks at you and says, yeah, I hated cheerleading. I didn't like cheerleading. That wasn't me. And she was like, I like to read books.
She's an introvert. She was an introvert.
She's an introvert, and she's an English teacher now at high school. So she's like a smart, introverted kid who just wanted to read books. She was a writer from a very young age. She has dozens of diaries filled with. She documented the entire thing as it was happening. I mean, this is one of my favorite things. It's almost the opening shot of the film. Is she wrote about what was happening. Her diary entries that are contemporaneous with what happened are just so sad. This 14-year-old trying to process her mom getting arrested, and
by the way, how is that as a filmmaker when she says, "Oh, and by the way, I have all of these journals that we have access to"?
Unbelievable. Oh yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you're trying not to be too predatory, but it's like, ooh,
right.
But she's no dummy. I mean, she understood. She was like, we can tell this story in a really thorough way. And she kept everything, was really well organized. I mean, rarely have I had so much, material as a storyteller to just like lay out the whole thing. And all those little details make it all so much richer. She has like the posters because of course in Texas in the 80s, the kids had to vote. Like you had to run a campaign to become a cheerleader, which again, they realized after this incident, maybe that's not such a great idea. So anyway, so there's Wanda and Tony, those are the parents, and then Shanna, of course. And then some of the other people we talked to in the doc were Flint Blackwell, who was the undercover investigator who pursued the case. fascinating character, right out of No Country for Old Men. I mean, such a great guy. And so he drove us around Channelview, which is the suburb of Houston where it all happened, in his like 1940s antique car, and took us to all the kind of the hot spots of the investigation and talked us through the investigation and how they wired up Wanda's brother-in-law to record her. And this is really like the heart of everything. And the thing that I think most people are familiar with is these recordings of Wanda saying she wants to hire a hitman. Mm-hmm. And you know, it seems very undeniable. And in many ways it is. I mean, this is what got her convicted, were these recordings. And we also got access to those recordings. You know, we had wonderful cooperation from the Houston, I can't remember the exact name of it, but there's an archive of evidence in the Houston police organization. And there was a woman named Rhonda there who was just a wonderful cooperator. And she led us right to the files, and we explained who we were and what we wanted to do. And we were able to make a copy of the recordings. And so, yeah, so those are in the film as well. We talked to one of Shanna's best friends at the time. We talked to Wanda's lawyer, Troy McKinney, who was also, again, all these people were made out to be like the dumbest, country hicks in the
Truly.
HBO movie. Mm-hmm. It's a very, I like the movie. It's funny, but it's really judgmental, you know? And you sit down and talk to Troy, and it's like, this is a brilliant lawyer. This guy's so sharp. He's so smart. He talks a little slowly. That doesn't make him a hick. Those were kind of our key interviews in the film.
Well, I wonder too, now if I look back, was that around the time that Holly Hunter made the movie Raising Arizona, which was really funny with Nicolas Cage? So maybe people kind of compared both of the, like, they didn't take it as seriously because they felt like it was just like another Raising Arizona.
Well, I think that was part of Holly's identity as an actor at that time as well. She had this broad Southern, I think she's from Georgia. Mm-hmm. And so, and her accent is wonderful to listen to, but it is kind of a little bit of a caricature. And her character, her portrayal of Wanda is certainly closer to the Raising Arizona than the actual Wanda, I think.
Hey, Prime members, have you heard? You can listen to your favorite podcasts ad-free? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free-podcast. That's amazon.com/ad-free-podcast to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
You can't always see bad weather coming, so it's essential that you're able to see through it when you drive. Michelin wiper blades with advanced technology hug your windshield like a Michelin tire hugs the road, channeling away water, snow, and ice so you can see clearly. Drive confidently and breathe easy. Michelin Wiper Performance. Clearer than ever. Upgrade to Michelin Premium Wipers today at your local auto parts retailer.
Okay, two things that jumped out at me. One, when Shanna says that she kept a journal, as you noted, but when she said, and I kept it in a drawer, this was after the whole trial and she's living with her dad. And she goes to find her journal one day and I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, you never keep a journal. First advice to people. And then her own father had taken her journal and then wrote comments in the journal that countered things that her mother had told her or suggested to her.
It's not healthy. Her privacy was completely destroyed. She had, and again, this is the toxic relationship between her father and her mother that led to this whole thing. In my opinion, was, as she herself says, her father and her mother were both hell bent on hurting each other, and Shanna was caught in the wake of that. And she has told me that now her mother understands that, and she does have a good relationship with her mother, and her mother has helped her raise her own, kids, and she feels completely safe around her mother because her mother, learned a very painful lesson by going to prison, and people can watch the film and they can decide after hearing the story whether they think that's fair or not, whether they think, Shanna says in the film, at no point does she believe it was ever actually a realistic possibility that there was a hitman that was going to hire anyone. I mean, the hitman never existed.
Right.
It was all just a fabrication to try to get Wanda in trouble. But to go back to your original point, Shanna's father made some pretty bad mistakes. And I can't remember if this made the film or not, but Shanna talks about that a bit. And, I'm not so sure.
No, she said he would interrogate her.
Yeah, but today I'm not so sure if he understands that even today that the mistakes that he made that continue to hurt her.
Yeah,
she's still working through.
Okay, another thing, the idea that she would go to her brother-in-law to set up a hitman, knowing that she has this hellacious relationship with her ex-husband, she would go to his brother to find a hitman. That gives me less reason to believe that this was a real thing.
So what got said in court, and again, it's not super explicit in the film because Wanda refuses to do interviews, and who can blame her after the way the media treated her? I think she just believes, Shanna says this, but I think Wanda could just as easily say it as people are going to believe whatever they want to believe, and there's no convincing them. But what Wanda said in court, so the version everybody knows is Wanda gets this idea in her head and is like, I want to find someone to kill this kid, so my daughter can make it on the cheerleading team. And she's like, who do I know that might know someone like that? Oh, my husband's brother, Shanna's father's brother, has been in and out of jail. He might know someone. She seeks him out and asks him these things, and that's when he records her. Now, what Wanda said in court and what nobody has heard is that she was running her mouth. That's the phrase that Shanna keeps using. It's such a Texas way to say it. She was running her mouth. And at parties and to friends, she was like talking about this crazy idea of like, oh, I got to do something to get Shanna on the team. And she bumps into her brother in town and is running her mouth to him. And he's the one that says, why don't you do something about it? Mm-hmm. Like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And Wanda's version of the story is that this was a plot concocted by her ex and his brother to try to put Wanda in a compromising position and get the cops involved and put Wanda in jail. And, Wanda's version of this would be that they were successful in doing that and that she was drawn into this thing. She points to the recordings in the trial and says, listen to what's happening. He's goading me. He's the one talking about breaking legs. He's the one talking about making her disappear to Kuwait or whatever he says. So, look, I'm not going to say, which one I believe, but that's her story. And that's how the brother-in-law gets involved.
So now that you've worked on this project, what's the biggest takeaway that you had? Some sort of experience that you had in the filming or something you learned from working with Shanna that will stay with you?
Well, first and foremost, Shanna's healing, like what the work that Shanna has done to come back from where she was, because as she explains in the film, this pushed her over the edge. Like she talks in the film about being on the kitchen of her floor, staring at the ceiling, unable to find a reason to go on, as a result of all this, and the sort of spotlight she was put under as a kid. And look, this is a woman with children, wonderful children. And so that really is unbelievably sad to hear, but she picked herself up and sought help and talked through it. And so the place that she's been able to bring herself back to, and now, one of her goals in making the film is she wants to start helping other people. She's created this website that you can go to and she does counseling for people. And so that I think is just to see the strength. And again, I think this family, Wanda is a very strong person. And so genetically, I think Shanna's a strong person too. So that was Kathleen, my wife and I's biggest takeaway was we are just so impressed with Shanna and her journey. So that was the biggest takeaway. But again, I'm a parent. I have a daughter, and that was very much, and again, our daughter is grown. And so she's past the age of all that stuff. But certainly seeing how one of the reasons this all got started was this ruthless, need for parents to want their kids to be a certain thing or fit certain roles. And again, I don't think it's as simplistic Shanna herself says, my mom was not living vicariously through me. She wanted the best for me. But even this idea of wanting the best for your children can lead to pushing in ways that are unhealthy. So I think, that's definitely a takeaway as well.
Well, I'm really grateful for the work that you put into it. It was really nice to see a different perspective of this case. And I think I will continue to look at it totally different. So I think you and your team did a great job. Tell everybody where they can find you and tell them about the other documentary that you have.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Kate. So I have a website, jasonlapeyre.com. It's Lapeyre, and I'm on Instagram. It's just my last name, Lapeyre, and I post regularly about my projects there. And yeah, I was mentioning to you earlier, coincidentally, I have another documentary coming out this week as well. It's called Monkey on a Stick. The subtitle is Murder, Madness, and the Hare Krishnas. It's premiering on AMC Plus and Sundance Now in the US. And it is the true story of the rise and fall of the Hare Krishna movement in the 70s and 80s, which unfortunately devolved into a criminal organization at that time. So yeah, a little more intense and violent than the Shanna story. But yeah, no less interesting.
What a fun job, though, that you can dip in and out of all these different stories.
Yeah, it's been a great couple of years telling these stories.
I want to thank my great guest, Jason, and remind you to click subscribe, leave a 5-star review, join the Facebook group Reality Life with KKC. Also, make sure that you get bonus episodes on my Patreon at patreon.com/KKC. And also, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at KKCCA, TikTok, it's KKC, Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at KKC. And if you want my what to watch list, you can get it by going to katecasey.substack.com and subscribing. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode.
Behind the closed doors of government offices and military compounds, there are hidden stories and buried secrets from the darkest corners of history. From covert experiments pushing the boundaries of science to operations so secretive they were barely whispered about. Each week, on Redacted, Declassified Mysteries, we pull back the curtain on these hidden histories. 100% true and verifiable stories that expose the shadowy underbelly of power. Consider Operation Paperclip, where former Nazi scientists were brought to America after World War II, not as prisoners, but as assets to advance U.S. intelligence during the Cold War. These aren't just old conspiracy theories. They're thoroughly investigated accounts that reveal the uncomfortable truths still shaping our world today. The stories are real. The secrets are shocking. Follow Redacted Declassified Mysteries with me, Luke LaManna, on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. To listen ad-free, join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app.